popular Muslim Uthman Farooq challenged David Wood to a debate about the Bible, and by the end of the discussion, he was accusing David Wood of things like this. Take a look.
Where does it say that? You're making that up.
I want to share a few clips with you so you can see how to engage with somebody who challenges you on your Christian faith. I've been watching David Wood's videos for a few years now, and I really like his work. I can't co-sign with everything he does in the name of exposing Islam, but the fact of the matter is he's a great resource because he tackles multiple different topics which many Muslims don't really want you to know about. Now, I'll give you my personal rating of how David did in this particular video at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around. The first clip is really vital because it's going to show you how the scene was set, and this is going to get you very prepared for engaging in these kind of situations.
Hopefully Sheikh Uthman Ibn Farooq is here. Got some questions about his track here. Now the problem is Sheikh Uthman likes to go off on like 300 different tangents.
David Wood is approaching this famous Muslim sheikh to talk about a specific topic in Islam. But the fact of the matter is David Wood is aware that, you know what, I'm going to try and start a conversation about something, but he knows that he's actually a bit slippery at times and can basically start going off on different tangents. He'll start taking the conversation in different directions. And as you know, this video isn't about that Muslim tract. It's ultimately about a Christian topic. The Muslim sheikh Uthman Farooq did something really skillful. I'll show it to you in a moment. Just as David is basically framing the question about the Muslim tract he wants to talk about, Uthman Farooq asks him a simple question about clearly unacceptable groups which are not accepted into the Christian faith.
Do you believe that Mormons are Christian? First off.
No, but I don't study it, so I don't really comment on anything.
That's interesting. I don't. What about Jehovah's Witnesses?
I'm pretty certain that this sheikh knows already that these particular groups are not accepted clearly in mainstream Christianity. But the point is, as David actually had predicted, Uthman Farooq is ultimately diverting the topic to something else. After throwing out these two little curveballs, what does he say next? He now says, let me ask you one question.
All right, so I have a quick question for you.
He's gone from David wanting to speak about a particular topic, now he's now talking about, oh, you know what about these groups and what about these groups? How are they viewed in Christianity? And now, let me just ask you one question. And at this particular point, he now proceeds to pick up the Bible, right? He picks up a John MacArthur study Bible, and David is obviously very intelligent, and he basically tries to steer the conversation back to the topic. Look at what he does.
This is why I came. Right? This is a Dawah booth, right? You're producing, you're handing out tracks. Yes. You're handing out tracks.
Yes.
Now you can see, despite David's constant re-steering back to the particular topic, Uthman is ultimately really sophisticated at this, and he was able to basically keep the conversation where he wanted to go. Now, the next thing he says is very telling, but it showcases to you something you need to know as a Christian when it comes to defending your faith.
I had a question waiting for you.
Yeah, but last time when I came.
So think about this. It was a short clip, but notice how Uthman Farooq mentions that he had a question waiting for David Wood. So although David Wood wanted to speak about a specific thing, you can see how Uthman Farooq had ultimately pre-planned to get David Wood to at least start with a particular question which was on the Bible. After 6 minutes of back and forth jostling, they both agree, the two men agree, that they'll speak about this particular biblical topic for just 10 minutes. Spoiler alert, they actually ended up speaking for 20 minutes, so double the time. But Uthman Farooq really wants to talk to David about different rules about slavery in the Bible. He brings up a passage in Exodus 21 verse 22 to 21, which talks about an individual who basically beats their slave and ultimately being punished. But if the slave doesn't die after a day or two, then there is ultimately no punishment. So this is the question. After getting David Wood to read the passage, this is the question Uthman Farooq asked David Wood, and David Wood's response will come after this. So listen to what he says.
So you, David Wood, believe that God, Jesus, allowed that if a person beats their slave, and as long as his beating is severe enough that he dies a day later, you cannot punish the man because a human being is another human's property that he can kill, just letting him live a day.
Uthman Farooq's whole issue here is he doesn't believe this is a just situation. Look at what David Wood says. David Wood gives a 3-part answer. Each part is basically building upon itself, and look at what he says first to respond.
One, the position of Christians, according to the New Testament, is that God did allow things in the past that He didn't approve of, they didn't think are good, but because of the hardness of our hearts, He allowed us to do them.
So the first thing you saw there, which was a golden start in regards to David Wood's response, is he quotes Matthew 19, where Jesus gives clear insight that there are certain laws in the Bible where God ultimately allowed them to take place, even though He didn't necessarily want them. And an example he gives was marriage and divorce. Now, ultimately in the Old Testament, God allowed people to get divorced under certain circumstances, even though God is clearly against divorce. And there's passages even in the Bible where God is talking about how He hates divorce. David now talks about how this particular passage, which Uthman Farooq is raising fault with, is not even being understood properly by the Sheikh, because the passages there talking about capital punishment.
As far as this is a series of commands that are talking about capital punishment, which we also have now.
The point David Wood is making here is, if you basically beat your servant, your slave to death, you will ultimately face capital punishment, a life for a life. If you beat your slave and they don't die, then that indicates you are not intending to basically kill them. So in that case, you will not die. Now, the next thing which David Wood actually says is actually even better. Listen to what he says next.
We have capital punishment. What do you guys have that in California still?
No, I don't think so.
No?
Maybe
Okay.
does. I don't know.
Certain states have capital punishment.
Texas does.
Right? Certain states have capital punishment, meaning if you commit capital murder, that's a death penalty. But there are lesser versions. There's second-degree murder, there's manslaughter, and things like that.
So you can see there, David Wood now ties this into something relevant, something modern, which many of us can understand. He talks about capital punishment. He talks about how even in countries like America, in certain states like Texas, for example, capital punishment is still permissible. The point is, David went from a clear law which highlights that God didn't want certain things to happen, even though He allowed them because men were ultimately wicked. He then talked about how that it's not even understood correctly by the Sheikh. And he thirdly talked about something relatable, which is always vital, because once you make something relatable to someone, if they're going to be honest, they will now be able to understand the point that's ultimately happening. This is where Uthman Farooq started to say that David Wood was ashamed of the Bible.
Where does it say that? You're making that up. Where does it say that?
I'm not making that up.
Okay, let's read the verse again, verbatim. Okay. See, this is why you're ashamed of the Bible.
So the Sheikh here is calling into question David Wood's character. No, David, you're making that up. The verse doesn't say this. And he continues to go down his same line of questioning about how this isn't talking about capital punishment. David is ultimately making this up. Now, David goes on to quote a scholar, and he says he heard this before. He knows this because he watched a training previously, but he can't remember the scholar.
See, now you can't name a scholar. Which scholar? Name him. Name him. Name him.
I will
Live caught on camera.
No.
Name him.
Woo!
Name him. Name him, Dave.
We're trying
Name
to
him.
keep this friendly.
Name a scholar. I am friendly.
I have to look it up.
Name
This
a
is not my area.
he got it from a scholar, but doesn't remember the name of a scholar. Name the scholar, Dave.
Can I
Name the
respond?
scholar. You're
Look.
making it up on the fly.
You
Bear in mind, David Wood, as he says in the video, his line of study, his main line of study is not the Bible or even the Old Testament. But he did reference in his video, which he posted, a link to the video he was ultimately talking about was by a scholar by the name of Peter Williams. Now, funny enough, considering we're talking on this particular topic, I want to recommend a book for this particular topic, because the fact that David Wood is speaking to a Muslim here, one of the claims a Muslim loves to make to Christians is how the Bible is ultimately corrupt. And considering, ironically, David mentioned Peter J. Williams, a book I want to recommend on this particular topic is this book right here. It's a book called Can We Trust the Gospels? Why am I recommending this? Because it's actually by the same person David was ultimately recommending, Peter J. Williams. I'll leave it linked in the description box for you to get a free audio book for you to listen to it as you go about your day-to-day life. But the fact of the matter is, I'll show you exactly what David Wood probably would say today. Now he's probably freshened up his memory on this particular point about capital punishment. And I told you I'll give David Wood a personal rating, in my opinion, at the end of today's video. So make sure you stick around to the end. Now let's go back, right? David Wood said 3 things. The point of interest for this particular video was, this was a topic about capital punishment. Uthman Farooq challenged David and said,
You're making that up. Where does it say that?
that up.
as Uthman Farooq said what he just said, David would have said something along the lines of, no, Uthman Farooq, I'm not making this up. This is actually clear to the context, because this word here, punished, in the Hebrew is a word which is nakam. Nakam ultimately is in reference to vengeance, to payback. We know this quite clearly because the passage contextually outlines this. But even when you go back to other references in the Old Testament to this word nakam, the clear majority use of this word is about paying someone back with vengeance. For example, the first time we see this in the Bible is in a popular story which many people know, whether you're Christian or not, Cain killing his brother Abel. And when God is judging him, what does God say? God says, if anybody kills Cain, vengeance, nakam, that is the same word, will be taken on Cain sevenfold. You just saw how David Wood was being accused of making things up about the Bible and exactly how to respond to this false claim by Uthman Farooq. And I said I would give David Wood a rating, and I'd probably say, because David Wood for the most part knew exactly what to say and said it in a very succinct and professional way, and as he said himself, because David Wood's main field of study isn't the Old Testament Bible, I would say David Wood did a relatively good job, and I'd give him an 8 out of 10. But look at what happened when this woman here ultimately was questioned by Kevin Samuels about what the Bible ultimately says.